Overwatch 2 has just launched, and it has already beaten Apex's concurrent viewer on launch count by 3 times as much with over 600,000 viewers. And that begs the question, is Overwatch 2 the Apex killer? While some of these streams are sponsored, a large portion of the biggest Apex creators have their roots in Overwatch, and that is one of the reasons that led to such a huge difference. It's safe to assume that most of you watching know what Overwatch is, but just in case you don't, I'll give you a very short introduction. Overwatch 1 was a 6v6 competitive multiplayer shooter game which combined the best from arena shooters such as Quake with MOBAs such as League of Legends, and was incredibly successful on launch and the years following its launch in 2016. Players could choose 1 out of 32 heroes and play for different objectives. Aim skill was a must, and team play was even more important. It's also worth noting that when Overwatch was released, it came at the price of $40. So why did Overwatch not already dominate Apex? In short, Blizzard made a few mistakes. The balanced patches had the game in a constant power creep state, with tanks, shield heroes, and bruisers becoming stronger and stronger, and compositions such as GOATs, consisting of free tank heroes and free support heroes, abused this to the fullest. Met with this challenge, Blizzard seemed to continue steering the ship towards a tank meta, effectively turning the game less and less of a shooter and more so of a MOBA. In addition to this, Blizzard announced Overwatch 2 in 2019, which would introduce a PvE campaign mode and change the game fundamentally from a 6v6 to a 5v5, effectively taking the off-tank role out of the game. But the big mistake, the real oopsie here if you may, was that while Overwatch players were waiting for Overwatch 2, Blizzard let the updates go to a grinding halt, and very little content was released through the next years. Not to mention, on the esports side, Overwatch was stuck behind a franchising system, making it incredibly hard to break into the esports scene and become a professional player. The path to pro, as they advertised it, was non-existent, which is kind of a big deal if you build a game around an esport. And those were some of the factors that led to the current generation of pros and content creators leave Overwatch for greener pastures, that being the new battle royale at the time, Apex. Apex was a breath of fresh air, with lots of new content, good gunplay, the ability for movement, and most importantly, a lot of viewership with the potential of a better endemic esports scene. Enter Overwatch 2. As I previously mentioned, Blizzard had decided to turn the game from a 6v6 to a 5v5 arena shooter, and in order to do so, 1 tank had to go. I forgot to mention that Blizzard did introduce a role lock in Overwatch 1, which stopped entire teams from running tanks, but it was just a band-aid solution. Blizzard seemed to have realized this, meaning that the team composition now only can consist of 2 supports, 2 DPS, and 1 tank. To the players who had left, this was pretty promising. If there are less tanks, that means that we'll once again see a more diverse meta, with emphasis on DPS and damage, rather than tanks going at it until one side eventually dies. And not only would Overwatch 2 have fewer tanks, but Blizzard were also removing most of the stuns and crowd control abilities, combined with almost all of the shields as well. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention. Remember when I said Overwatch 1 was $40? Overwatch 2 is free to play. Now, the Overwatch 2 beta was lackluster, with many, myself included, saying that barely anything had changed and it was just Overwatch 1 with a new look, so most players assumed that it would flop on release. On the contrary, Overwatch 2 dropped with a lot of unexpected features, which actually blows Apex out of the water. Not that Overwatch already didn't have the upper hand on a lot of these things, but the polish of Overwatch 2 made previous long-term players return, if just to try it out, and many streamers, sponsored or otherwise, are giving it a go. Overwatch is once again among the top of the stream games on Twitch. So what makes Overwatch a potential Apex killer? Anyone who has played Apex, even just for a little while, couldn't resist drawing comparisons between the two games. Anyone who came from Apex would instantly notice that Overwatch just has more of a polished AAA game feel. Sure, it doesn't have the Source engine movement and nice gunplay, but it feels solid. Players had returned to Overwatch 2 from Overwatch 1 after having played Apex have also noticed that Overwatch has borrowed a few features from Apex, and I guess battle royales in general. While the core game is more or less the same, Overwatch 2 now featured an intuitive ping system, which allows you to communicate with your team using a ping wheel, meaning that you can fully communicate vital information, sometimes even better than with voice, by using a ping. Not only that, if you ping around where the enemy is, it will automatically ping them and call them out to your team, which immensely helps with focus fire and does a great job of alerting your team if there's someone on the lurk or diving your supports. You know that they took inspiration from Apex, as pinging has the exact same key, that being the scroll click on mouse and keyboard, and G apparently. A battle pass, which does fall fall under a little bit of scrutiny by the casual player base, but hey, at least it's not loot boxes, right? This battle pass allows you to unlock new items, be it legends, skins, voice lines, and more, and can either be for free with a limited amount of unlocks, or a premium version which allows you to get even more experience as well as more unlocks. And finally, there seems to be a different SBMM at play, as players have reported a forced 50-50 matchmaking, though it's too early to say whether that's implemented or not, especially whether it's implemented like the one in Apex or not. And of course, we have the redesigned legends. They definitely know what they're doing over at the Blizzard HQ. Along with that, Overwatch has several features that Apex fans have requested for years, yet still haven't been added. The most notable being long queues. Well, yes, these are pretty annoying, but the matchmaking is solid as a result. And even better, Blizzard actually added a feature where you could either go into the practice range, join a skirmish or a deathmatch, and even play in custom game modes and lobbies as you wait. These custom game modes have no limit and are part of the Overwatch workshop. These are custom modded modes, much like Apex has with R5 Reloaded, but is fully supported by Blizzard with an in-game code editor, so you can build your own game mode however you want. There's also a role queue, and while this might not completely fit in Apex, there's definitely sort of a meta of a rotational, a flanker, and a support legend in Apex, and it would be nice if you could prioritize which role or legend you would want to play. Moving on, this feature, or a lack thereof, has been in Overwatch since release in 2016. There's no aim assist for PC controllers, and if you're playing on console and you try playing crossplay, you have no aim assist as well. Once Redditors and Apex Twitter noticed, this did stir up a huge storm, with Apex pros and content creators defending the lack of aim assist and berating the Apex console players. And as a mouse and keyboard player, I can see their point of view. A game like Overwatch would be impossible to play as a mouse and keyboard player if aim assist was in the mix. Especially because, unlike certain other games, Overwatch tries to stay as competitive as possible, which mixed input esports never will be. Moving on, the optimization is miles better, and that is to be expected seeing as Overwatch isn't built on an ancient engine, but it runs flawlessly compared to Apex, which after my 4090 upgrade still doesn't hold 240 stable frames on 1440p. Not only is it better optimized, but there are very few game-breaking bugs in Overwatch compared to Apex. The audio design is also one of the best when it comes to first-person shooters.
I'll say yours though. Okay. I kind of want to
making sure that you only hear the audio cues that matter. Your teammates are quieter and flankers are louder, especially when they're lurking around looking for a pick. Not only that, but every legend has a distinct footstep sound, making it much easier to know who's coming around the corner before they even peek. In the same vein, the distinct hero design makes it very easy to tell what hero you are looking at a first glance. Their silhouettes are unique and pretty easy to make out, as is their animations, and every skin is consistent for the hero, unlike in Apex, where you very often mistake a bunch of legends because they just all kind of look the same at range or at a first glance. There's a much more visible default reticle, as well as a much more fleshed out custom reticle builder, though I will cut Apex a little bit of slack here, seeing as there is a limit to how much customization aim down sight really allows compared to Overwatch's hipfire. Another feature that fans have long requested, especially ranked grinders, is an actual in-game leaderboard. In Overwatch, you can check out whatever rank you're at and who's in the top 500. This is a huge way to see how the rankings are and gives a lot of exposure to rising talent. You might know who the #1 Apex Predator is, but what about number 2, 5, 15? You'll never know unless you're streaming and already pretty famous already. On top of that, there are ranked rewards that are, in my opinion, at least a little bit better than a badge. Depending on where you place in a competitive season, you will get a certain amount of CP. These points can be used to purchase golden variations of your hero of choice's weapon. Unlike the badges, you can constantly see these weapons in game, though I would still love to see a game bring back the challenger jackets that League of Legends used to have. And of course, although we are getting team skins in Apex after a long wait, they still pale in comparison to Overwatch's. Actually, now that I think about it, I'd argue that most skins in Apex pale in comparison to the ones in Overwatch, though that's a pretty subjective take. Also, unlike Apex, Overwatch has cross progression and 120 FPS on new generation consoles. Just thought that I'd throw that one out there. And all of these things make Overwatch a objectively better product than Apex Legends, but the game is obviously a lot different than Apex, which is a BR, which is inherently uncompetitive, and can't necessarily be compared one-to-one with Overwatch, which was built with esport in mind and as a main goal. After having played Overwatch for a while, and as an Overwatch veteran who used to compete and win some tournaments, as well as being highly ranked on the ladder, I feel like Overwatch is more engaging, there's less downtime, and just an overall fresh breath of air, even though it's pretty close to the previous version. And I think that the increased support from Blizzard with the revitalized interest and player base might be enough to put Overwatch back on the map. It's not only a breath of fresh air for me personally, but for anyone out there who's tired of all the luck-based, casual-focused games and just wants a properly competitive game that isn't a tactical shooter. As a mouse and keyboard enjoyer since my early teens, it feels very good to once again play in a game with only mouse and keyboard users as well. It is hard to explain, and please don't hate on me for this, but not constantly dying to rotational aim assist just takes so much frustration off my shoulder and lets me focus on improving. I also think that if Overwatch does take a lot of Apex's player base, this is a good thing. This might force Respawn to push fan requested features out, and honestly, don't be surprised if you start seeing a lot more requested features being added to Apex in the near future. But at the end of the day, we don't know if Overwatch is here to stay or not, and we don't know if it's gonna kill Apex or not. We're just gonna have to wait and see. If you guys want to learn more about movement, specifically the levels of Apex movement, check out the video on the screen. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.